They met under the spotlight, but their connection was born far beyond it. When Yaman and Demet Özdemir were first cast together, few could have predicted the fire that would erupt between them, not just on screen, but behind the scenes too. From the very first day on set, something was different. Their chemistry wasn't scripted. It wasn't rehearsed. It was real. And for a time, it was everything. Their eyes found each other even when the cameras weren't rolling. In quiet corners of the studio, in shared glances across crowded rooms, in fleeting moments that neither of them spoke about, but both of them felt. It started innocently. Jokes between takes. Light touches, passed off as casual. Long conversations after long shooting days. They told themselves it was just friendship, just the closeness that came from working intensely together. But the truth lingered in the air, thick and undeniable. Then came the night everything shifted. It wasn't supposed to be a date. Just dinner. Just the two of them, celebrating a successful episode. But that night, something cracked open. The air between them changed. Every word was slower. Every look held longer. And when Demet reached across the table to touch his hand, just lightly, Ken didn't pull away. He never would again. The days that followed were a whirlwind of stolen moments, secret rendezvous, and emotions neither of them fully knew how to handle. Fame had taught them to be careful. The industry had taught them to hide. But love? Love made them reckless. They were inseparable. Even when the world didn't know, their hearts did. Even when they smiled for the cameras as just co-stars, their souls danced in ways words couldn't explain. And in those private moments, when it was just the two of them, no scripts, no pressure, they were something entirely different. Something raw. Something real. But no great love comes without its shadows. As the series gained momentum, so did the rumors. Paparazzi lenses caught more than just staged photos. Fans began to speculate. And with speculation came pressure. The kind of pressure that seeps into even the strongest bonds. They were expected to be perfect, not just for each other, but for everyone watching. The world wanted a fairy tale. And Can and Demet wanted to give them one. But real life isn't always scripted. The cracks were subtle at first. A missed call. A distant reply. Demet pulling away during an event, just slightly. Can arriving late to dinner, distracted, his mind somewhere else. Their worlds, once so intertwined, began to stretch. He was being offered international projects. She was exploring new opportunities. And in the quiet spaces between their busy lives, doubt began to settle. Still, they tried. They took weekend getaways, hidden from the press. They stayed up late talking, trying to find their rhythm again. Ken wrote her letters, handwritten, raw, unfiltered. Demet kept them all in a small wooden box by her bed. Every one ended the same way, "Don't ever forget how this started." But love, no matter how deep, sometimes isn't enough. The night it ended was a quiet one. No shouting. No anger. Just silence. The kind that wraps around your heart and doesn't let go. They sat on opposite sides of the same couch, close, but oceans apart. Neither could say the words. Because saying it out loud would make it real. Would make it final. Demet looked down at her hands, her voice barely a whisper. "What happened to us?" Ken didn't answer right away. He stood up, walked to the window, stared out into the night like he was searching for something, maybe for a version of them that still existed somewhere out there. Then he turned back to her, eyes glassy but calm. "Please don't forget me." That was all he said. And with that, he left. No door slam. No dramatic exit. Just footsteps fading into the hall, and a silence that would echo in Demet's heart for months. The following weeks were a blur. Public appearances, fake smiles, interviews where they dodged every question about what really happened. The media spun their own stories. Some said Ken cheated. Others blamed jealousy. None of them knew the truth, that sometimes, love doesn't end in betrayal. Sometimes, it just fades. Slowly. Painfully. Quietly. But the memory of that last night, of those final words, never left Demet. And it never left Can. He kept her photo in a drawer. The one she didn't know he had. From a day at the beach, sunlight catching in her hair, her smile unguarded, free. He would take it out sometimes, when the nights were especially hard. When he wondered if she still thought about him. She did. There were moments she almost called. Almost texted. Her fingers would hover over his name, her heart pounding. But pride held her back. And fear. Fear that hearing his voice would shatter the delicate healing she'd tried so hard to build. Years passed. They both moved on, at least, that's what the world saw. New co-stars, new projects, new relationships. But none of it ever quite matched what they had. Because how do you move on from something that never really ended? Sometimes, at night, Demet would still hear it. That voice. Please don't forget me. And she never did. Ken threw himself into work after that night. The silence between them had become too loud, too permanent. He tried to distract himself with scripts, new roles, interviews, traveling across continents. But no matter how far he went, no matter how many cities passed beneath his window seat, there was one name he couldn't outrun, Demet. She was everywhere. Not in the tabloids or headlines, that was easy to ignore. But in the little things. The way a line in a script sounded like something she once said. The way a perfume in an elevator made his heart stop for half a second. The way the sunset looked when he landed in Rome, how it reminded him of that beach trip they took together before the world found out about them. He dated. He smiled. He even convinced himself he was fine. But every time he tried to truly move forward, something inside him whispered, "You left your heart behind." Meanwhile, Demet wasn't doing much better. On the outside, she shone. Red carpets, fashion campaigns, glowing interviews. But late at night, when the makeup came off and the applause faded, she was just a girl lying in bed, staring at her phone, wondering if he was doing the same. She replayed their last conversation more times than she could count. She remembered the way he looked at her, like she was both the love of his life and the goodbye he never wanted to say. Sometimes she wondered if she should have stopped him. If she should have grabbed his hand, begged him to stay. But she didn't. And he didn't ask her to. All he said was, "Please don't forget me." She never forgot. That sentence became a haunting comfort, his voice, etched into her memory like a permanent echo. She wrote about it in her journal. She even tried to turn it into a song once, but the words wouldn't come out right. Too raw. Too real. Then came the letter. It arrived 2 years later. No name. No return address. Just her name, handwritten, the ink slightly smudged, as if whoever wrote it had hesitated. Inside was a single page. I told myself I wouldn't write. That it wouldn't change anything. But I lied. Every time I look at the sky and it's the same color as your eyes, I think about what I lost. I never wanted to let go. I just didn't know how to hold on anymore. If I ever meant anything to you, know that I never stopped carrying you with me. See. She read it 100 times. At first, she didn't know what to do. Call him? Write back? Pretend she never received it? But the truth was, she'd been waiting for this letter since the day he walked out. It gave her hope. Not necessarily that they'd be together again, but that their story wasn't just forgotten. Because that was her biggest fear, not losing him, but being erased from his story. But Ken never erased her. In every interview, when asked about his past, he smiled in a way that said more than his words ever could. In every role he played, a part of her was there, hidden in the way he looked at his co-stars, in the timing of a pause, in the ache behind his eyes. Demet noticed. And slowly, she started to open the old box again. The one with his letters. The ticket stubs from their secret trip to Cappadocia. The small necklace he gave her after her first big award. All these things she had tucked away, pretending she didn't need them, pretending she was okay. But she wasn't. Not really. Not without him. So she wrote him back. It was short. Just 3 lines. I never forgot you. I don't think I ever could. Do you still remember me the way I remember you? She didn't send it right away. Days passed. Then weeks. And then, she found out he was in Istanbul again. It wasn't in the news. He hadn't posted anything. But a friend mentioned seeing him quietly at a small cafe near their old neighborhood. Alone. With that same faraway look in his eyes. She went there. Not to confront him. Not to fall into his arms. Just to see. Just to know he was real. That the letter wasn't a dream. She sat across the street, watching through the glass. He was nursing a coffee, staring at nothing. But something about his posture, his stillness, told her he was thinking about her too. She almost walked in. Almost. But her feet wouldn't move. Because she realized something terrifying: if she went in there, everything might change. They might talk, cry, maybe even forgive. But what if it wasn't the same? What if the magic they once had was gone? So instead, she left the letter with the barista. No name. Just for the man in the corner seat. That night, Ken read it under the dim light of his hotel room. He stared at those 3 lines like they were a map back to a life he'd buried. The next morning, he returned to the cafe, hoping she'd come back. She didn't. But he went again the next day. And the next. And on the 4th day, just as he was about to leave, she walked in. No words. Just eyes meeting across the room. And everything, every fight, every tear, every missed moment, faded. He stood up. She walked over. And without thinking, without planning, they hugged. Not like strangers. Not like old friends. But like 2 people who had finally come home. Time passed, but this time, it passed gently. They didn't rush. They didn't announce anything. There were no Instagram posts, no public outings meant for attention. It was just the 2 of them again, behind closed doors, laughing about old memories, learning new pieces of each other, and discovering how love could survive even the longest silences. Some nights, they would talk until dawn. About things they never dared speak of before. Their fears. Their guilt. Their regrets. One night, Ken said something that made Demet cry, not out of pain, but because it was the truth she had been waiting to hear for years. You were always the one. I just didn't know how to hold you without breaking myself. Demet reached for his hand and whispered back, you never had to be perfect. You just had to stay. And this time, he did. There were still difficult days. Healing doesn't come in straight lines. There were triggers. There were doubts. But now, they faced them together. Ken no longer wrote letters he never sent. Now, he read her poetry aloud in the morning, while she sipped coffee and smiled at how different, and yet how familiar, everything felt. Demet no longer clutched memories in the dark. Now, she laughed at his jokes while walking through open streets, no longer afraid of what the world might say. And one quiet evening, under a sky turning lavender, she asked him, why did you say it like that? That night, before you left? Ken turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I knew I was walking away from the best thing that ever happened to me. And I didn't want to be forgotten. I didn't want to disappear from your story. She smiled, eyes soft and shining. You never did, Ken. You were every chapter. They never tried to go back to what they were. Instead, they wrote something new. Something braver. Softer. Wiser. A love not born from perfect timing or fairy tale beginnings, but from real pain, real growth, and the kind of forgiveness that only true love can offer. Years later, When asked in an interview about the most important lesson he had learned, Ken simply said, "If it's real, it finds its way back." And when Demet was asked about the moment she knew she was finally home, she answered with the words he once gave her. "Please don't forget me." She never did. And he never had to ask again.